featuring former and current mayors who are thriving, sharing their story, insight, wisdom, and viewpoint. Join us and comment on social media as we meet another of the superheroes we elect to lead the rejuvenation of our towns and cities and who serve us all. Visit www.thrivingmayor.com to learn more. Here we go. Good morning, everyone. It's Michael Hubicki, the host of the Thriving Mayor Show. It's February 10th, 2021, and I'm really happy today to have as our guest David Feehan, the president and CEO of Civitas in Washington, D.C., who are downtown experts. Good morning, David. How are you today?
Great, Michael. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for making the time. David, have you ever been a mayor?
I have never been a mayor. I did consider running for city council in Minneapolis, but I was warned by friends who had had that experience that that is not what you want to do. So.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. So thank you for clarifying that. And David is an expert in downtown revitalization, and that's what we're really going to be focusing on today, which is so important now as our cities and towns are facing a rejuvenation and a revitalization after the pandemic. So by way of introduction, I wanted to read a little bit about David. David is an international expert on downtown revitalization and former 10-year president of the International Downtown Association. And he's led downtown efforts in Detroit, Des Moines, Kalamazoo, revolutionized the parking industry, has authored 2 books and many articles on downtowns and community development. And one of David's books is called Design Downtown for Women, Men Will Follow. And that was published in 2018. And a summary of that was, today, women in both business and leisure have a critical influence on the success of a downtown area. What are the factors that should be considered when designing or reinventing your downtown so that this important demographic feels welcome, safe, and included? This book explores the factors that influence their desire to do business, travel to, and stay in your downtown. Wonderful. So it's really, really amazing work that you're doing, David. But before we get into the heart of the matter, I wanted to ask you, when is the last time that you used the word sagacity?
Well, Michael, you reminded me that I think the last time was when I wrote an article for the Aberdeen News about a ill-fated motorcycle trip from Aberdeen to Minneapolis when it was 7 degrees Fahrenheit, and it took me 19 hours. That trip is usually a 5 to 6 hour trip.
Wow. And so what time of year was that?
That would have been in March.
Oh, yeah. So 7 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold.
That's cold. Yeah.
And so at what point did you come up with the term sagacity? And just remind us what that means.
Well, sagacity is another term for wisdom. Okay. And I was certainly lacking in wisdom when I departed Aberdeen at about 8:30 in the evening, thinking I was going to get to Minneapolis by 10 o'clock the next morning. It didn't work out that way.
How big was your bike and how fast were you going?
The bike was a 125 cc's, which was a really small Yamaha, and it would do, with the cold, it would only do about 40 miles an hour.
Wow.
So it was not the proper vehicle for that time of the year.
No, even wearing a snowmobile suit.
A snowmobile suit, 3 pairs of pants, 4 jackets, and a helmet, and everything I could pack on.
Yeah,
including, I think I even put my roommate's .25 caliber revolver in my belt just to be on the safe side.
Wow, that's an awesome story. How I wonder if there's any connection from a trip like that, or moving from city to city, into what you're doing now.
Well, I think one of the things that I was interested in, even at that time, was urban development, and I stopped in just about every small town from Aberdeen to Minneapolis. There must have been 20, 25 towns along Highway 12, and you really get a sense of the life of those smaller towns, and I'm sure that's true in Canada.
Mm.
They have the big cities, but until you get out into the small towns and really meet some of the officials, I know I spent about 3 hours warming up in one of the towns, and the only person that was awake was the postmaster, who was also the police chief and the school bus driver.
Oh, gee.
So,
Awesome. That reminds me of one story that I had back, and I think it was 85. And two of us left University of Manitoba in Winnipeg in my Volkswagen Rabbit, and we piled in and we drove to Banff, Alberta for a ski holiday during reading week. And there was an Australian with us. And as we were coming back on the Trans-Canada Highway, and it was cold, blowing snow and cold, and we said, never let the gas tank get below half, no matter what. If you got to wake us up, stop and get gas. He woke us up, and the needle was down in the red. He said, guys, sorry, I didn't notice, but we're almost out of gas. And we were in Saskatchewan somewhere. And we said, okay, we got to get off the highway. There was a small town, and there was a gas station. We pulled in, parked at the gas station, and it was Sunday morning. So we said, okay, Sunday morning we'll get gas. And the sun came up, and we kept turning the car on and off, and we got warm. Sunday morning came around, no one showed up at the gas station. So we went to the laundromat bowling alley across the road and said, when does the gas station open? Oh, that's Monday morning. But we got classes Monday morning. So the person was kind enough to drive over to the gas station owner, and he came and he pumped us gas, and we made it back to Winnipeg. But downtowns are so critical, and that the smaller they are, the closer knit the community is. And we both have some really fun stories about our downtowns.
One other kind of wintertime story is I was living in Pittsburgh, and I met my wife in Pittsburgh, and we had to at first go to visit her family just north of Pittsburgh. And then I said, well, we're going to Minneapolis over the Christmas holidays to see my family and introduce you. So we drove to Minneapolis. And before we left, I said, bring some warm clothes. It gets cold there. She said, I'm from Pittsburgh. I know about winter. And I said, no, you don't. No. And so for the 5 days we were in Minneapolis, it never got above 12 below zero Fahrenheit. And there was 2 feet of snow on the ground.
Wow.
When we left, she said, I love your family. And we had stayed downtown in the Skyway system. So we weren't freezing, but she said, I never want to live here. Don't ever ask me to live here.
Yeah. And I guess she never moved back.
We never did.
Yeah.
I had an offer when my friend Sharon Sales Belton became mayor of Minneapolis in 1993. I think she offered me the job as director of the Economic Development Agency. I ended up going to Detroit instead.
Right. Awesome. So, David, why are downtown business improvement areas and associations so important?
Well, what we found is, and there was a great book written about 10 years ago called The Experience Economy. And the authors were Pine and Gilmore. And what they said is that we've evolved from a commodities economy to a goods and services economy and then to an experience economy. And downtowns are really all about experiences. So the important thing is to figure out what kind of an experience you can offer both the visitor, the shopper, the downtown resident, the downtown worker, because they're all essential components of successful downtowns. So downtowns, we did a study when I was in Des Moines, Iowa, and we found that downtown paid $19 in tax revenues to the city for every $1 in services it consumed.
Wow.
That's a return on investment. I've asked a number of city managers and mayors if that number holds true in their town, and they said, well, it may not be quite that high, but it's got to be at least 10 to 1. So downtowns are the goose that lays the golden eggs, if you want to put it that way. And residential areas don't carry their weight in terms of the taxes they pay. Downtowns provide the extra dollars that provide the good services, good schools, good police and fire protection, good
Yeah.
streets, and so forth. So that's
Yeah.
why downtowns are so important. And the other reason is because they are really the symbol of the city. You know, when people think about Toronto or they think about Winnipeg or Calgary, Victoria, they really picture the downtown, uh, and that's identity is so important as well. Character,
Right.
personality.
And the downtown business improvement associations work hand in hand with the mayor and council and city staff um, and are kind of, I guess, the life or the heartbeat of the community that's forming this initiative to move forward, has the vision and is implementing it and helping the merchants um, the people downtown come together.
Absolutely, Michael. Most people don't realize that the Business Improvement Association started in Toronto
Wow, I didn't know that.
in 1969, and then the next one was in New Orleans in 1980, but it really took off in about 1990 with Philadelphia. And so the Business Improvement Associations, or BIDs as they're often called, are they're always a partner with city government. You never get anything of substance done in a town and municipality without public-private partnerships.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. So, David, going back to your book now, again, the title, Design Downtown for Women and Men Will Follow. So can you share a little bit of the explanation, the rationale behind why women are the most important demographic for revitalizing downtowns?
Absolutely. Well, one thing I realized as I had begun working in downtowns is that we were competing with suburban shopping centers, but we were not competing effectively. The suburban shopping centers were where all the retail was, and that's where the shopping takes place. And women, as you know from my book, represent about 80% or more of retail purchases. So we needed to look at why downtowns were not appealing to women. And one of the first things we found was they're not designed by women.
Mm.
If you look at architects, landscape architects, real estate developers, engineers, urban planners, urban designers, all of those professions are very much dominated by men. There's only a couple of professions that design the downtown experience that are dominated by women. One is interior design,
Mm-hmm.
another is event planning.
Mm.
But otherwise, all of those other ones I named, probably 25% are the best, that women are represented. And then when you think of the professional associations like the one that I headed, the Urban Land Institute, the other major professional associations, virtually all of them are directed by men. So that's who's setting the tone, setting the direction, determining the agenda, what the profession is going to be talking about at its annual conferences. And we've had probably a dozen annual conferences in Canada, by the way. So almost every major city in Canada has hosted an IDA conference.
Wow. Yeah. So I guess we're in Canada here. We're the pioneer.
You absolutely are.
Toronto in '69. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. And having worked in the industry for 31 years, working with mayors and council and downtowns and the public and trying to rejuvenate downtowns, it's quite often we worked hand in hand, and we even had as clients sometimes the Downtown Business Improvement Association, which were really, really fun projects because they knew exactly what the obstacle was, how to move it forward, and then we can sit down and really come up with concrete plans. And you're right, the mindset of the male retail experience versus the female retail experience, I'm sure is very, very different. What are some of the ways that our downtowns are transforming now to connect better with women?
Well, there are several things. We're talking a lot about public spaces or the public realm. So the plazas, the sidewalks, the areas that we see and experience, again, using that word experience every day when we're in a downtown area, have to be designed in such a way that they really accommodate and are pleasing to women. For example, women have very different perceptions of color than men do. One of the questions we asked, and we put together a list of 130 or so women leaders around the North American continent, and we asked the question, "What color is downtown?" What do you think they said?
Gray.
Exactly. Over 80% of the women said gray. And yet women prefer warmer colors, reds, yellows, oranges. Men prefer grays, beiges, blue colors, and so forth, cooler colors. That's something that has been scientifically researched and proven. But there are other things that I'm sure we're going to talk about that either make women feel comfortable and want to be there, or things that don't. One of the things we also found was that benches, which are often found on streets, on sidewalks, are often designed with men's anatomy in mind. And so when a woman sits down who's shorter, particularly we're seeing more immigrant women who are, typically shorter, their legs and the way they sit, they can't put their feet on the ground.
Right.
Their back isn't up against the backrest, so it's not as comfortable.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, and we had one comment here was, how can downtown merchants start to change the color of downtown?
Well, one of the things that they can do is display windows, and that's I believe I'm trying to remember, but I think Montreal had a program called Commerce Design Montreal, and they engaged architects and others to design the interior and the windows to make them more colorful and appealing. So that's one thing that can be done. Another thing is the facade of the building. We all love historic preservation, but we tend to think that everything has to be either brass or green or brick, and in order to be, comply with the national regulations. And we don't think about banners and signboards and other things that can really add color and drama to the experience.
Yeah, there's some examples in Canada that I'm thinking of, like Niagara on the Lake is an example that they've really tried to maintain the heritage architecture and the scale of the sidewalk and the streets, and the old trees. And the old trees are so critical to that, to the shading and to the cooling of the environment, to add the color, to add the birds and the noises, and even some as the leaves drop and change color in the fall. And so that blend of some architecture, but then a splash of color sometimes on a facade, things like that, they can all really help to animate the space.
Absolutely. And picking the right trees is an art.
Yeah.
It's really important. Shade is critical. But one of the things that we also found was, the grates that go around the base of the tree, those are high heel catchers. And if you ever think about, being a man, we don't wear high heels typically. I mean, Prince did, I guess, but but if you catch your high heel and break that heel when you're on your way to a meeting, what do? You look around, you don't see any shoe store, you don't see a shoe repair shop. So you take off your shoes, or you hope you've got some flip-flops in your bag or whatever.
Yeah.
It's, that's, and I've got pictures of some of these grates that are just designed as high heel catchers.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see here. Here's another question. So with the pandemic, we've noticed, and I had a mayor on a couple of weeks ago in Belleville, and he'd mentioned how they were loosening up some of the regulations downtown, so allowing restaurants to start to spill out into the streets a little bit more, and actually closed one lane of traffic And question here is, will the increased outdoor bistros and gathering areas remain after the pandemic? What do you think about that, David?
I actually think that they will. I think there's a real movement across not just North America, but also Europe as well, to cut some of the on-street parking and
Mm,
provide seating. But the other thing that's important, did a study in Fort Collins, Colorado a few years ago, and we found that the value of one on-street parking space to that entire block in a year was about $300,000 in sales.
wow.
So you don't want, if you have on-street parking, mayors, you don't want your employees and employers parking in front of the store.
Yeah.
That's
Save that for the merchants.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Or the shoppers.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Changing direction a little bit here. This is an interesting question. 1/10 of the global population practice urban agriculture and is a growing trend. How viable is urban farming in Canadian cities and towns? And I guess northern U.S. cities and towns as well.
Absolutely. I love that question. One of the groups I've worked with in my hometown of Minneapolis is called Project Sweetie Pie. And they
Project Sweetie Pie?
Sweetie Pie.
Oh, Tweety.
Sweetie Pie.
Sweetie Pie. Okay.
Yeah. And they have, I think, something like 50 urban gardens throughout North Minneapolis.
Wow.
And they've got hundreds of young people, teenagers, working in those gardens. And so you're getting lots of benefits from that. One is you're getting the kids with their hands in the soil.
Yeah.
And they're really feeling a sense of ownership for that community. Secondly, they're learning about healthy foods. Third, they're eating healthy foods.
Yeah.
And fourth, they're able to take the surplus to the farmer's market and sell it at the market, and they're learning business and social skills. So, but the other thing that I've been working with in several cities is the idea of vertical farming. And there's hydroponics, aquaponics, and aeroponics. There are various sciences that will allow us to utilize cities to grow food. We're going to need more food in the next 40 years than we have in the entire history of agriculture.
Wow.
So being able to grow food in cities is going to be really important. And why do you need a lawn with, grass, Kentucky grass or whatever? Why not plant some fruits and vegetables in your front?
Yeah. And over 80% of us live in cities and towns.
Right.
And that's only going to keep increasing.
Right.
I would think. Yeah. Well, actually, on that, David, do you think the trend now with more working from home, the larger office buildings having fewer people working in them, at least at the same time, is going to start to change that urban intensification trend that we've been on, and we may see these percentages start to drop back down again?
I think it's going to have some create some changes that we haven't really anticipated and understood yet. I think, for example, I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, but my area is a very urban, very diverse area. My wife works for the federal government, and she's working from home today. She hasn't been into the office in months.
Right.
So what's happening, I think, is that the suburban areas around your larger cities are going to become more urban and more. They're going to try to emulate some of the things that make downtowns very appealing and popular. And so that's going to have some important effects. And I think one of the things we were talking about was it's going to help to clean up the environment. There's going to be less carbon produced as people are driving to work.
Actually, that ties right in with Enzo's question here. What are some of the benefits to the environment associated with downtown revitalization?
Well, absolutely. And the downtown as a work center and a place to go, we've really begun to, and this is what worries me, is we had begun to really change people's habits and getting them to take subways and buses and so forth. We've just instituted a BRT, or bus rapid transit,
Hmm.
here where I live, and that's become very popular quickly. But there is a certain fear that people have in terms of the pandemic, and they're all required to wear masks when they get on
Hmm.
public transit. But
Yeah.
that's an important issue. Now people are talking about the 15-minute city. And
What's that?
15-minute city is where you can live in a downtown area, and within a 15-minute walk, you can get to everything you need: grocery shopping, to your place of work, to a place of recreation.
Wow,
To
that's fantastic. What are some examples of communities that are building that now?
Well, I think I recently talked with my friend Richard Florida, who lives in Toronto. And I think Toronto is looking at doing that. And I think there are some other cities in Canada that are really looking at that concept. I think Vancouver is another one. Charles Gauthier, who's the downtown director in Vancouver, and I were talking recently.
Oh,
So
interesting. Just want to go back a little bit to the farmers market, Enzo's question about local food production, and we chatted a bit about farmers markets before, and how they're really enjoying a massive uh, renaissance, a lot of excitement around them, and it's not just about vegetables anymore.
absolutely. Well, people are looking for reasons to socialize, and they're looking for opportunities to not only shop but to be entertained. And so farmers markets give you an opportunity to bring people together. When I worked in Des Moines, Iowa, we had the largest farmers market in the US. We had over 300 vendors, and the joke was that every Saturday morning you would see 10 of your best friends at the
Yeah,
farmers market.
you're right.
But these are just, there are, I think, 170 farmers markets in the Washington, D.C. metro area. And,
Wow.
um, you kind of begin to wonder, can the farmers all supply all of these markets? But what people don't realize is in Montgomery County, where I live, which is adjacent to the District of Columbia, we have a 90,000 acre ag region that's set aside for agriculture. So we are producing a lot of farm, products right here next to the city.
Wow. Now, is that obviously Washington has winter? So
Mhm.
what are the farmers and farmers markets doing in the colder months?
Well, there's quite a number of them that have greenhouses, so they're growing through the winter. And then we don't, in our farmers markets, we don't allow resellers. In other words, you can't
Hmm.
go to the wholesale market and buy tomatoes and then sell them as if they were freshly grown. But these farmers have become very adept at growing products in greenhouses, and like I said, in hydroponics, aquaponics, and aeroponics. There's all kinds of ways to grow in vertical, in buildings and so forth.
Interesting. Enzo's added a comment here. One downtown area I visited suited for shopping and eating is in Avon, Ohio, Crocker Park Boulevard. A good mix of business, offices, restaurants, private franchise, retail, parkland with seating, outdoor gas fire pits. Yeah, so they're obviously trying to extend the comfortable season.
Absolutely. And fairly recently, I was in Denver, and the temperature was about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. And they had the overhead heaters, the
Mhm.
propane heaters, and it was very comfortable. We were sitting outside, and so I think we're going to see people. And of course, being from Minnesota, we're used to being out there in the cold and going ice fishing and sitting out on the ice. And
Mhm.
by the way, the first time my dad took me ice fishing on Lake Mille Lacs, it got down to 48 below Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And it was so cold that he put a case of beer by the door in the fish house, and the beer froze.
Yeah, I could believe that. you did a podcast with Municipal, actually two podcasts with Municipal World Magazine a little while ago, and one of the things that you talked about was what aspects of downtown do women hate most. And just by way of kind of concluding, I thought maybe we talk a bit about that, and then some ideas on how to move that forward, so that we really start to engage.
Well, the thing that maybe surprised us a bit, and I do quite a bit of parking consulting, is
Okay.
that the women told us that the number one most hated aspect was parking downtown, and it was specifically named by many who said it was parking garages. One woman said, "Parking garages are dull, dirty, dark, and dangerous."
The
And
four deadly D's.
that's right. That's right. But it's partly, finding a place to park and
Yeah.
not having good wayfinding systems and other systems. It's partly the fact that if you do find a space on street, the kiosks, the parking meters, the multi-space parking meters are often ill-designed for women. The lenses where you have to read the price and directions and so forth are often made in such a way that if the sun is shining in from behind you, you can't read it, and
Right.
it's often too high for a short woman to read, and often the directions are complicated, and so people will pull up and they'll look at that for 10 minutes and then just pull away.
Yeah.
So parking was number one. Number two was women said they hated the lack of clean, safe bathrooms.
Mm.
And one of the reasons why many women cited is they said that because women tend to be caretakers for both the elderly and children, and who
Right.
has to go to the bathroom more frequently? Little
Yeah.
kids and the elderly. So those were two of the things that they disliked the most. You mentioned trees, lack of shade. Mentioned sidewalks. We sometimes our architects got cute with pavers that were uneven
Mm.
and walking, and when again you're walking in heels, those can be ankle breakers.
Yeah.
Those were some of the things that women really disliked about downtown, and men, just because we don't have the same experiences, we don't think about those things.
Yeah. Yeah, just one of the last projects I was working on before I retired from landscape architecture was a complete street project where we took about 4 kilometers of a downtown street and looked at how do we turn this into more of a linear park, and connected 3 different trails in the downtown, actually stopped through traffic from some of the blocks, still allowed people to access a business or home or whatever it was, and try to take that street that wasn't needed for the traffic demand anymore in the downtown, and make it a people place. And when we went out to the public, they said, wow, it's fantastic for cycling, for walking, for strolling, for putting in gardens, pollinator gardens for bees and things like that. So we're getting there, and these projects are so much fun. And once they start getting built and populated, and people can enjoy them year round, especially in our really dynamic Canadian climate, it's going to really help our downtowns.
Well, I've been working in Minneapolis with the area called Dinkytown, which is Dinkytown is famous because it's where Bob Dylan got his start. Right
Okay.
at the University of Minnesota. But we're talking about doing exactly the same thing. And I've got one more good Canadian story to tell you.
Okay.
In a minute. We were doing a project in Winnipeg with Dave Hill, who was head of the parking authority there. And Dave had this habit every Thursday morning of going and sitting in a coffee house and just letting people come in and talk to him.
Awesome.
Executive director of the parking authority.
Yeah.
So we were talking with him one morning, and this gentleman came in, and he was really angry and a huff. And he said, I just invested over $1 million in this laundromat, and he told us where it was. And he said, now you've got parking meters around the laundromat that only take 1 hour time. And there's no woman in the world that can do all of her laundry in 1 hour. And so Dave, being a very customer friendly guy, said, we can fix that. We're going to give the laundromat special placards, and they can put them on the cars.
Oh,
And
nice.
none of the women or the customers, because
Yeah.
some of the men will get a ticket while they're in your laundromat. And so it takes, sometimes municipal governments are not as creative in their thinking, but it takes that kind of creativity. And I would say to your audience, think about the little things that make life work, make it happier, like the street, like you're talking about.
Yeah.
If you can convert those into people places, I think it'll go a long way.
Yeah. It's the little things that show that we care.
Right.
And they just make such a huge difference. Well, on that, David, I'd like to thank you so much. This has been a great half an hour packed with so much amazing information. And we all learned what the word sagacity means. And I wish you all the best for 2021 and moving forward with your consulting firm as well. And definitely keep coming up to Canada and helping us keep our downtowns thriving.
I plan to do that, Michael. I have relatives in Canada, and as soon as I can travel again, get my shots, I intend to make a long road trip, but not on my motorcycle.
No. Stick to the four wheels now.
All right. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you so much, David. Take care now.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining the Thriving Mayor Show. Make sure to like and share and tell your friends and colleagues. Mayors are awesome and are the change agents to enhance the quality of living for over 80% of us. Remember what Coach Wooden said, you cannot live a perfect day without doing something for someone who can never repay you. Much love and peace. Until next time.